Crystal Ball College Football. I'm your host, Grayson. For what a week in college football. I mean, this was so much fun. All these top 25 matchups. We got to see some really talented players, some high-level play across the country. And, I think as we go through this week and talk about some of the matchups that I got to see over the weekend and some of the big-time performances and what it means for college football, I think there's no better place to start than with the biggest one of the weekend, which was Tennessee beating Alabama. I know a lot of people have talked about this matchup, and for good reason, right? The 15-year streak is over. Tennessee wins 52-49. This is the most points Alabama's given up since 1907. I mean, these storylines, like, you can't draw them up any better. And the things Tennessee has had to go through over the last, 20 years, it just all culminated in this one final moment. And to see that field, I mean, at Neyland was just incredible. I mean, the fans so passionate, just been waiting for this moment, right? And they beat Alabama in what was just a fantastic matchup between two elite offenses and two opportunistic defenses. I'm not going to say that either of these defenses are elite because they're not, but offensively, I mean, holy cow. The fireworks were exploding, and yeah, it was just terrific. Everything about it. Hendon Hooker versus Bryce Young, so much fun. But of course, as we do, we're going to talk about Tennessee first. They won, so I'm going to highlight them, kind of talk about what I saw from the Vols. And, everything I saw from them was kind of what I envisioned at the beginning of the year, except to another level, right? I felt like this team was going to be good. I mean, I've sat here and talked to you all about this. I thought they were going to be, a borderline 10-win team, a 10-2 season, and 10-2 for Tennessee would be remarkable. But now their sights are on something much, much higher. And I mean, that's kind of where they're at now, because when you beat Alabama, when you reach this point and you're undefeated in the season, now you start looking ahead about, what's next and college football playoff and possible national championship. And I know everyone is going to be talking about that. Now, got to be careful, right? Because many teams have beaten Alabama and then faltered along the way. So Tennessee's got to keep their composure. But what I saw was a team that absolutely kept their composure without arguably their second best offensive player in Cedric Tillman. He did not play in this game. So it was basically the Hendon Hooker show with a whole lot of Jalen Hyatt. And I mentioned this last week when I talked about Tennessee, this simple fact that without Cedric Tillman, it has allowed these younger receivers to grow into a much bigger role on this team. And Jalen Hyatt is the perfect example. He was expected to take a big leap this year, and he absolutely has. There's no doubt about that. But a big leap versus a 6 catch for 207 yards and 5 touchdowns against Alabama, there's a huge difference. But I think the loss of Tillman early in the season really allowed him to just kind of reel in his role as a true wide receiver one. And that was just super evident in this game. And then also, Brew McCoy, statistically, you're not going to look at his numbers and say, wow, what a matchup, 2 for 38. But he had the biggest catch of the day for Tennessee late in that game. A one-on-one matchup, he went up and got it. And I'm telling you right now, I think that without Cedric Tillman being there, it's given him the confidence to go make those plays as a young guy as well. So kudos to those young receivers stepping up. I know Hyatt's not young. He's been there a little bit, but I just think from a perspective of being a true elite wide receiver, he took that jump on Saturday. So definitely giving my praise to those guys. Hendon Hooker, elite, 385 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception, 56 yards rushing. In control of the game, right? Absolutely in control of the game. He is now the favorite, in my eyes, to win the Heisman Trophy. And C.J. Stroud's going to have plenty of opportunities to, take that away from him. He'll have a matchup against Michigan. But in my eyes, what I saw from Hendon Hooker, what he's done for this Tennessee team all year, he is the midseason Heisman favorite at this moment. So great stuff by him. I also felt like, we talked a lot about Tennessee coming into the year, about their offensive line, their struggles there, especially protecting Hendon Hooker. And in this game, they only gave up 1 sack and 0 quarterback hurries. This is a team that really struggled to protect Hooker last year. And in this matchup, an extremely important matchup against one of the best pass rushing defensive lines in the country, they rose to the challenge. and they looked awesome. And so that has continued to fix itself. And that's a credit to Hendon Hooker, his ability in the pocket, his mobility, and also Josh Heupel for drawing up a scheme that has really protected his offensive line. And a good way to protect your offensive line is when you're able to run the football, which they also did in this game, which was probably not the most, it was one of the most shocking things in this game, is that Tennessee ran for 182 yards. Only 4.7 yards per carry, but when you're doing that against Alabama, that's a big deal. They were able to put themselves in positions to convert third downs because they were able to run the ball. They were able to put themselves in good down and distances because they were able to control the clock and control the yardage to the sticks. So massive there, massive to see them being physical up front, and just massive for this Tennessee program in general. I'd also say defensively, yeah, they weren't good. Yeah, they got torched. They gave up 455 yards. But again, I'm talking physicality here. So I mentioned Tennessee ran for 182 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. Alabama, on the flip side, this big physical monster in Alabama, we've seen the running game for years. We've seen this offense line have too many draft picks to count. They had 114 yards on 3.7 yards per carry. I'm telling you, physicality was the difference in this game. Tennessee was better up front than Alabama when it came down to protecting their quarterback and running the football. And that does not happen to Alabama very often, but in games that they lose, that is typically how you're able to slow them down and beat them. For Tennessee, like I mentioned, they gave up 455 yards passing. They got torched through the air. Bryce Young, he was incredible. It was fun to watch him versus Hendon Hooker. But the thing that stood out to me about Tennessee also kind of defensively was they only had one sack. And that one sack, you look throughout the year, they've been much better at actually converting their opportunities to get sacks into sacks, which was something they didn't do last year. They were 7th in tackles for loss a year ago, but they were in the bottom 20 in sacks a year ago. That has shifted. Now they're inside the top 20 in sacks, and it's because that disruption, that havoc has actually paid off this year. So in this matchup, one sack, right? And you go, okay, what's the big deal? One sack, that's not really getting it done. But Bama had one sack as well. And I mentioned Bama had 0 quarterback hurries in this game. Tennessee had 9. So while, yeah, they weren't getting sacks, they were drastically influencing Bryce Young in certain situations. And I mean, Bryce only incompleted 17 passes. That's not a lot. He was pretty efficient. But in those 17, I'm sure a lot of them were due to these quarterback hurries. And, guys like Jeremy Banks and Aaron Beasley, they've been good all year, and they continue to do that in this matchup. So very encouraged by what I saw from the Tennessee defense, even in a moment where they gave up a ton of yards. So I mentioned this being a program-changing win. It absolutely is for Josh Heupel and this entire program. And now you look ahead, right? And the rest of their schedule is UT Martin, Kentucky, at Georgia, Missouri, at South Carolina, at Vanderbilt. Guys, I mean, I'd be stunned if they lost more than one time, and that one time being to Georgia. And so now you sit there and go, okay, so they go 11-1. Let's say their loss is to Georgia. You can still get into the college football playoff at 11-1. I mean, shoot, we've seen that in the past. They can absolutely do it. Now things get interesting when, let's just say, Tennessee beats Georgia. Bama wins out. So Georgia's 11-1. Tennessee's 11-1. Bama's 11-1. Or Tennessee's 12-0. They go to that SEC championship. Bama beats Tennessee. And now you're seeing there Tennessee's 12-1, Bama's 12-1, and Georgia's 11-1. Might be setting up for it. I'm not going to say they're all three going to get in, but I think there's a high probability that something like that happens. And you're probably going to see 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff once again, unless, Clemson and Ohio State and other teams went out. If that happens, then maybe you'll see them get kicked out. But as of right now, I think it's pretty apparent that those 3 teams have a great shot at getting to the college football playoff, and Tennessee is a program that is ascending. Now you got to take care of business, because I'm sitting here saying, hey, they should go 11-1 with ease. It's not that simple. It never is. And now they just got to maintain their consistency as they get healthier throughout the year. But right now, I think Tennessee fans, Vols fans, you got to be just so happy. This was a program-defining win. Josh Heupel, just his time at Tennessee, this program defining, and an opportunity for him to really sell this on the recruiting trail. So congrats to Tennessee, my team of the week this week. So that's it for today. I'll have more episodes throughout the week, kind of recapping other games this week. But thanks for listening to Crystal Ball College Football.